Gotta keep the fans pleased. So I see that we have the premier of Nevis on the Zoom. Am
Yes,
I
he
correct?
is.
And my little research tells me that unless my information is incorrect, he hails from, at least his place of birth is Gingerland, Nevis. And Gingerland, Nevis is where my grandfather hails from. When I went to Nevis, took my family there a couple of years ago, I made it a point to go to Gingerland. So it does have some resonance with me and my family. Mark Brantley, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to the good people at WINNFM as well. I'm, as always, happy to be here and happy to be a part of this link up with Antigua, Barbuda, and St. Kitts and Nevis.
All right. Well, it's certainly an honor. Certainly seen you on the campaign trail. I think one or two of your posts on social media have been shared with me, and listeners, let's just say you come across as a very strong personality. Let's put it that way, and I don't mean that in a negative way.
Well, I think I can only be myself. I've tried. I think that in the context of our politics, people want leadership. They want leadership that they can look to, people who are willing to stand up for them. And I think that is what I try to do. And I believe that the people of Nevis have responded positively to that type of messaging. And that is who I am. So long as I'm here, I don't know for how much longer, but so long as I'm here, I think that is what I try to bring to the table.
All right, great. Who gets to ask the first question or the second question?
Well, since you're our guest, you may go ahead.
Oh, you're so kind. Are you pleased? Well, outside of the fact that obviously you won at the polls and your party won all 3 seats on this on Nevis, are you pleased with the outcome in St. Kitts to the extent that you believe you will have a partner that you can work with in the interest of the Twin Island Federation?
I'm always pleased with the outcome of free and fair elections because once the people have voted, their decision is what we have to live with. And I always say that their decision, their voice is the voice of God. And so I have no difficulty whatsoever with the decision. In a democracy, we go, it is a contest of ideas and people decide. And the people have decided. It is quite obvious from the results that the people on St. Kitts have overwhelmingly decided that the Labour Party is their party of choice. And the people on Nevis have equally overwhelmingly said that the Concerned Citizens Movement is their party of choice. It therefore means that the 2 islands have spoken, and they've spoken, I believe, quite emphatically. And those of us who have been privileged to be elected and who have won their confidence now have a duty, an obligation to work together in their best interest. So I look forward very much to working with Dr. Terence Drew and his team. He's a new prime minister. He's a young person, no parliamentary experience, has not been in the parliament before, has not been in government before. And so in many respects, he comes with a clean slate. And as I like to say, he has no baggage. And so it is up to him now to define himself as prime minister, to basically say to us in the next days and weeks and months what he's made of. I no doubt, because I have been there when I became Premier of Nevis as a younger person then, I have no doubt that he is being pulled in a million directions right now. So it is my hope that he has the necessary balance, he has the necessary grounding, that he will depart from some of what we've seen his predecessors do, and that he will truly be a figure to unite St. Kitts and Nevis once and for all. I am prepared and my party is prepared to give him the benefit of that doubt, to give him the benefit of time to show us what he's made of, and we are prepared to work with him. I think that is what the people of Nevis have said, that my party is their preferred choice to represent them. And certainly the people, brothers and sisters in St. Kitts, have spoken just as eloquently that the Labour Party is their choice. So that being said, I believe that we now have that obligation to make this work for the benefit of those who have entrusted us with their confidence. And that is what we propose to do, certainly on our side of the narrows.
Okay. All right. Jade, Azem?
Well, Honorable Premier, first and foremost, let me offer congratulations to you and
Thank you.
your colleagues on your success at the polls last week. I think that I remember the last time we spoke on air, you kind of joked about the fact that, hey, they said there's somebody supposed to run, but we're not too sure about what's happening there, and I think you guys took that confidence. I think you were speaking in confidence, and you took that confidence into the election, and you were proven correct in your assessment that the people really wanted the CCM led the government, and so here we are. Of course, one of the big talking points during the campaigns was the issue of fair share, and it would be remiss of me not to first ask what is the state of that conversation. We have heard that you've already had some conversation with the new Prime Minister, and from his indication, it seems that he is positive in terms of what it is that you guys can achieve together. What is your feeling, and as it relates specifically to the fair share, let's say, discussions?
So let me put it in perspective. I would have sent a congratulatory message via WhatsApp to the new Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, and he would have responded, I believe it was on Sunday last, with a telephone call. And so he and I spoke, and he did indicate that he wanted to meet at the earliest possible opportunity. I understand, again, he's settling in. We have not yet had that opportunity to meet. But on the first working day, which was Tuesday after the holiday, I would have written to him and set out for him in writing some of the issues which we thought were critical to Nevis and which we thought could be addressed with priority. I have not yet had a response to that, but I do know that he has received that letter. But I recognize, again, they have to think about his swearing in and portfolios. He has a lot on his plate at this point. So I'm willing to wait and let him settle in, and then we get down to business. In relation to fair share, as you know, that is a critical part. In fact, I think that was one of the principal reasons why Team Unity broke up, because the then Prime Minister, now happily in retirement, was not prepared to countenance abiding by what the people of Nevis had voted for, and frankly, what he himself had committed to. He and the Team Unity had persuaded our electorate that they represented a new paradigm, that there would be fairness and equity in the system between our two islands, and that simply did not happen. The people in Nevis, again, would have demonstrated how they feel about fair share, because they not only voted for CCM, they voted overwhelmingly for CCM. And when I saw that map of Nevis, which is all blue, I thought to myself, they are sending a very clear message to the Federation. This is who they want. These are the issues that matter to them. Now, with 1/3 of the population in Nevis, the question is, what will the Prime Minister sitting in Bastia decide to do? To my mind, it would seem logical to engage, and to engage constructively, and to see how we can solve these problems. Will he do that, or will he be like his predecessors and decide to go down a path of more of the same? If it's more of the same, then regrettably, I feel that the people of Nevis would not have achieved that which they're seeking to achieve, which is greater equity and greater participation insofar as federal politics and federal issues are concerned. I would like to reiterate that from our perspective, we're prepared to give Dr. Drew that benefit of the doubt. He's new. We're prepared to say to him that we are willing to work with him to achieve success for both islands, and to ensure that all of our people are included in the thrust for greater and more sustainable national development.
All right. Premier Brantley, what was the value proposition of the CCM? Was it just fair share, or were there other issues in the campaign that resonated with voters, at least to your advantage, that you think made all the difference when compared with the NRP?
So the issue of fair share was critical because I think our people understand it. And if you understand our peculiar history, I think that is something that resonated with our people, because the people of Nevis have consistently said that they don't feel they get a fair shake insofar as the Federation is concerned. It is for that reason that our people and my party rallied with Team Unity in 2015. It was because Team Unity promised that we would change that reality. And when those promises clearly came to naught, we said we couldn't stay. And so we exited, and that perhaps assisted in precipitating the collapse of Team Unity. The other value proposition here, I think, is people wanted to get rid of Timothy Harris. He had become a cancer. He had become toxic. And the people of Nevis wanted none of him. They did not want to see him in Church Street anymore. And so a vote for us, I feel, for many was a vote to get rid of him. I have never seen any leader who had lost so much popularity so quickly as he did. And I believe at the end of the day, we were right, because the polls bore that out, that the people of St. Kitts also rejected him and his party overwhelmingly. So I think that was another value proposition, to borrow your terminology. On the other side, there was no clear messaging. The other side engaged in a campaign of simply talking about me and bashing me and saying all the things that were wrong with me. But that doesn't add any value to the people of Nevis. They refused, for example, to articulate a position in relation to the fair share. They seemed disinclined to engage with condemning some of the clearly dangerous rhetoric and nonsense that was emanating from Timothy Harris and his team. And we understood that because they were being financed by the PLP, and so perhaps didn't feel that they had the capacity to speak out. And so the people of Nevis, I think, wanted leadership that they could trust, leadership that they could feel comfortable with. And we offered that. We said clearly, we are standing proud as a Nevisian party, born in Nevis, made in Nevis, representing the people of Nevis. We have no paymaster anywhere. We are standing on our own 2 feet. And I think the people of Nevis responded positively to that. The other side couldn't say that, because whilst they adopted a public posture that they were not aligned with any political party in St. Kitts, we were well aware where the financing and funding was coming from. And so I think that was the fundamental difference. And we exhibited a type of independence that the people of Nevis are attracted to. And again, they voted overwhelmingly for us.
All right. I get. May I just follow up?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
Jade,
sure.
go ahead. Go ahead, ladies.
No, go ahead. I'll ask after.
Okay. Two of your responses this morning suggest that there is little love lost between yourself and Dr. Timothy Harris, and I'm being charitable. Have you had a conversation with him post-election, or not so much?
I've not spoken to Timothy Harris since about April or May of this year. Oh. And, when I wanted to have a conversation with him about how we could save Team Unity, he was not interested in that conversation, because he was on some fairy, fantasy land, saying that he was a top dog and he is the reason why everybody won their seats. So, regrettably, he preferred to sink the ship if he could not remain the captain indefinitely. And so, here we are. He's gone. I'm here. And we will continue to do the very best that we can for the benefit of our federation. I think that in all of this, we have to commend our people in our country, because the institutions worked. What I mean by that is to say that we had an election which, by all accounts, was free and fair, an election which produced a result. The people have settled down now, the country has settled down. And I feel that the aberration, which was Timothy Harris, has now been corrected. And so I feel that the institutions did work ultimately. Our democratic process did work ultimately. And it is my fervent hope and belief that never again should we go back to that type of leadership. It was a mistake, and the country has corrected that mistake. So I have not spoken to Timothy Harris, and my own view is that when I wanted to speak to him to say, let us correct course, he was not interested in that conversation. I don't know what he will have to say now, but I wish him all the best.
Right, that answers my question. Jade?
Well, I have a quick follow-up as well. Of course, I reside in St. Kitts. I vote in St. Kitts, and so I may not be fully versed in Nevis politics, and I may miss some of the conversation. And of course, we tend to sensationalize things that are said on the platforms. We pull what we want, take things out of context. But sometimes looking on from this side of the channel over at Nevis, it does sometimes feel as though the cheat code to win the elections in Nevis, whether federal or on a local level, is to bash who is ever sitting in the Prime Minister's office in St. Kitts. Do you think that there's any truth to that, or what may lend to some people feeling that is the case, especially for those of us residing here who may not be as versed in the Nevis politics?
I think that's a fair question, but our recent history would suggest that is not in fact the case. In 2015, certainly we had an issue with Dr. Denzel Douglas. He and the NRP were in coalition at the time. We thought the same issue really, that Nevis was being unfairly treated. And so we spoke up about that. It was that was part of the catalyst for Team Unity. If you recall, that is why we documented a framework for Team Unity that we call the Charleston Accord, and that Timothy Harris, Sean Richards, and the late Vance Amory would have signed. So that would have been the position in 2015, but by 2020, when Team Unity was basically contesting the election and asking the people to re-elect us, there was no bashing of any leadership on St. Kitts. At the time, we had issues, but we were seeking to resolve those issues. I felt confident that those issues could be resolved. Of course, we won in 2020, and those issues got worse because I think, unfortunately, by winning, Dr. Harris at the time felt that he had been emboldened. And so those issues became worse. So I would just look at our most recent history in answer to your question. So 2015, yes, we adopted a position, not only in Nevis, let me say, but also in St. Kitts that was anti-Labour NRP coalition at the time. In 2020, there was none of that. And then, of course, our most recent history is that Team Unity collapsed. And we needed to get rid of Timothy Harris. And I'm happy that we did.
Okay.
Right. Okay, well, speaking of the coalition between Team Unity, so the election period, we've heard you and the leader of the People's Action Movement speak about being still in that Team Unity mindset. We see that they were not successful at the polls and you were. So what is your standing with the People's Action Movement? What is the relationship going forward? How are you going to, if you guys are planning to build that relationship continuing, even though they weren't successful?
Well, what we said was that at the end of the day, we are elected by the people of Nevis. We have a responsibility to the people of Nevis. The People's Action Movement and the Concerned Citizens Movement coalesced because we were the remnants of Team Unity. We were what was left after, of course, Timothy Harris left the fold. And we still believe that the principles, the core principles of fairness, of equity, of the two islands being allowed to play their part in national development, and those core principles are still very valid. Term limits, that the Prime Minister be limited to 2 terms, fixed date for elections. All of these were core principles of Team Unity, which unfortunately were abandoned by the leadership that we chose, because I must take responsibility for it as well. So we had, if you will, that those core principles that still guided us. And the People's Action Movement was the only party in St. Kitts that was openly and publicly saying that they too felt that the people of Nevis should get a fair share. And so it was a natural affinity that developed. But I believe Sean Richards and I are practical people, and we've always said that, listen, at the end of the day, this is our messaging. This is what we have said that we will do, but it depends on the people. And the only way you can be at the table is if you have seats to be at the table. And once the election is held and the people have spoken, there is a governance that then emerges. People must then govern. And so for us, we have great affinity to the People's Action Movement. I have tremendous respect for Mr. Richards and his team, but we must now look forward and look to see how we can manage in terms of a new government in Bastille and how we can engage with them. And that new government is the Terence Drew-led Labour Party. They are the ones now in government. And so I have an obligation to engage with them on behalf of the people of Nevis. I go back to that map of St. Kitts, which is almost entirely red, and a map of Nevis, which is entirely blue. And that, I think, is what we must now seek to do.
All right. No, in Antigua, the opposition United Progressive Party and the Barbuda People's Movement, ideologically, strategically, there is alignment. All right, they generally, parties that work closely together in the governance of the Twin Islands state. To what extent would you say the CCM has a relationship with either of the party? Well, clearly not Timothy Harris and his concept of team unity, but is there a party on St. Kitts that you think your party is closer aligned to than the other? Based on your answer just now, it sounds like PAM, but I may be wrong.
Well, I don't think that there's a party that we're closer to. I think that there have been a number of circumstances since 2015. We put Team Unity together, which was 3 parties, PAM, PLP, and CCM. It was the first time in the history of CCM, which is a party that is over 35 years old, that we had ever aligned ourselves with any party on St. Kitts. But we did that in 2015 because we thought that the then government represented a clear and present danger to the country. And we coalesced in order to get rid of that government. And we had hoped to usher in a new paradigm, a new governance, freshness, if you will, to our country. And so because we have worked together with PAM and PLP, and then PLP, of course, went astray, it left really us with PAM. And so that is where that affinity, if you will, would have come in. But it is not as if to say that we've had some long-standing relationship with any political party in St. Kitts. This is really a matter of quite recent vintage.
Okay, understood. Of the criticisms that have been leveled in your direction, I mean, as leaders, one would think that, you look, as human beings generally, we look at ourselves, if we're true to ourselves and honest with ourselves, and say, look, what area do I need to work on? Where am I the weakest? Where is there room for improvement? Is that something is that a conversation that you have openly, or even conversation you have with yourself or your advisors? Hey, where do I need to improve? And if so, what those areas might be?
I'm so happy I'm on this interview. I'm just hearing for the first time that there are criticisms of me. I mean, I never knew that happened.
Well, so, you just said that the campaign was littered with,
let me say, of course,
you're being yes, I understand.
I think we all throughout this journey called life have to continually reflect and readjust. It's not only in politics, but even in our day-to-day lives. We have our own characteristics, some of which are good, some are not so good. And so we continually have to improve. And I think, yes, that's part of the process. Introspection is good. Also, of course, the observations of those trusted advisors around you who say to you that perhaps you said something, this wasn't the right thing to say, or perhaps you adopted that approach that wasn't the right approach. So the short answer is yes. I've listened to the criticisms. Some I put in the, ignore the noise bundle, because for me, some are just noise. Others, I think, are legitimate criticisms, which,
for example,
really to stay in the position of leadership and to continue to represent the people, one has to listen to the people. And so that is also important.
Yeah, I was asking, for example, real quick. I know we don't like to talk about our negatives, but what would you say your weak areas are?
Oh, my weak areas. That's an interesting question. I think I need to reach out more. I think I need to be in the community more. I think I need to go sit on people's steps and in their living rooms a bit more. I do a lot of public appearances, but my constituents are telling me that that is not enough. That being here with you is fine. They hear me on the radio, they see me on television, they listen to my press conferences, but they also want me to come and sit with them on their porch and talk to them. And that's a particular and peculiar phenomenon of small island politics. And I think I need to do that more. So if there is one legitimate criticism, I think that's it that I need to address.
Okay, fair enough. Jade, Azem?
Well, earlier you mentioned that the people clearly rejected the PLP government, as the former prime minister, who had 2 seats, lost 1 and now stands at 1 seat. But the People's Action Movement had 4 seats and they lost 3 and they also stand at 1. So would you say that the same can be said for the People's Action Movement?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's no doubt that the results show that the people rejected PAM in this election. And the People's Action Movement clearly has some thinking to do. They have some, introspection. Let me go back to that word. They have some soul searching. and they have to rebuild. The one thing I think, though, is that the People's Action Movement has deep roots. They're a party that is over 50 years old, and I believe that they have been here before. Let us reflect that there was a time when PAM had no seats at all in St. Kitts, when the cry of all eight. Jade, you might have been too young for that, but nevertheless, you know, there was a time when people talking about all eight.
Oh, I remember.
This, you remember, okay. Preschool, your preschool days. All right. So, you know, people talking about all eight and this kind of thing. So there has been that history, and PAM has rebounded and PAM has rebuilt. The better question, I think, is in relation to the PLP, because the PLP, in my view, had really no particular philosophy. It was all about what the government could do and the freeness that came out of Church Street. And so you take that away now, that the public purse is no longer available, that you can't put 1,200 people on peace and 1,400 on step and how much on PAP and fixed roof. And the question is, what is left? And I believe that that is now the issue, that those parties that have a grounding, a history, you know, strong roots in the community, I think those are the parties that will survive.
My final question, because I'm going to have to take my leave in a few moments, Jade and Azem, to Honorable Mark Brantley. Speaking about PAM and its future and rebuilding, I think Peter Wickham and Ava Grant, who were on my program earlier this week, said as much. My question to you is, do you believe that this rebuilding can be successfully executed with the current leadership? I'm referring to the Honorable Sean Richards specifically, of course.
But that would be a question for PAM, not for me. They will have to determine whether or not that can happen. And I have every confidence that they are a party much older than my own party, and that they have what it takes to do what is necessary to make themselves once more a party that is a contender in St. Kitts. Questions of leadership would clearly be for them. And I am pretty sure that they have the necessary quality of people around them, that they'll make the right decisions.
And you have elections next year? Is it next year Nevis has Nevis Island elections?
It might be next month. We never know.
Oh,
but they're due. They're due
Okay.
by March. They're due by March of next year. So we'll wait and see.
We'll wait and see. All right. Are you expecting to receive any support from either main party on the mainland, so to speak?
We never have, and we have never asked for it. And we've always been proud that we stand alone. And so we stand strong as a Nevision party. We do not ask for support from St. Kitts. We have never had in the history of this party, and we never will. So we expect going forward that we will stand as a Nevision party and go to the Nevision voters and say we are the best party to represent you. And we expect to win all the seats available in the local election. We have all but one at the moment. We expect to pick up that one as well. And we're hopeful that the people will continue to...
A little opposition is good for democracy, sir.
Well, they can oppose. They can come on your radio and oppose. They can, you know, write opposing articles in the newspaper. They can do all of that. But at the end of the day, you know, the people must vote for the representation that they feel comfortable with and the representation that they can trust.
All right. Yes, lady and gentlemen, I will have to take my leave now. It was really an honor meeting you, albeit virtually, Honorable Mark Brantley, Premier of Nevis. Thank you so much for being a part and for taking my questions. Much appreciated, sir.
Sure, and thank you. I now have met a fellow Gingerlander, so that's good. You know?
Yeah. Yes, indeed. We need to talk about that off here. I'll tell you who he was many moons ago.
That would be interesting.
Yes.
That would be interesting. Good.
Right.
Well, thank you very much. Lady and gentlemen, does that mean you're done with me or you continue with me? I have no idea
why
how
would
this
you
goes.
leave us just like that? I thought you were spending time with
I
us.
don't know.
I'm gonna have to leave the party. Parting with such sweet sorrow sometimes.
But Darren,
it was great.
Darren,
Thank you so much.
Darren, quickly before you go, it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that your fans here in St. Kitts have asked us to make sure that you know they exist, and there's a high level of admiration for you here in the federation as well.
Oh, thank you. You caught me off guard with that one. Thank you.
Like the fans, they would not have let me live it down.
All right. Thank you. Please extend my warm greetings to them as well. And I had some recent conversations about, you know, ending the drought. I miss St. Kitts, to be honest, and Nevis. So got to do something about that. So we'll speak about that as well.
You're the water bringer. Okay, hurry up, come.
Yes, indeed. All right.
All right. Premier, thank you for hanging out with us a bit longer. Trust me, we appreciate it. I'm sure there's a lot on your plate, so we don't take it for granted that you're here hanging out with us for a few more minutes. But we actually, you actually just mentioned the upcoming election there in Nevis. What do you anticipate would be some of the main issues to be discussed during that campaign?
Well, I think in local elections, we always pivot to local issues. And local issues for us would really be us running on our record. I feel that on the island of Nevis, it cannot really be seriously said that we have not performed. In every aspect of development on the island of Nevis, infrastructure, agriculture, healthcare, education, jobs, the economy, that Nevis is on the rise. And I think that that's obvious. The way that we handled the COVID pandemic, for example, the fact that Nevis has one of the best records in the region in terms of our handling of that pandemic, the fact that we weathered that storm and it's still standing, the first global pandemic in 100 years. No premier in the history of the island of Nevis has ever had to deal with a global pandemic, with borders closed, with our tourism industry shut down. And I feel that those are the issues that we will take to our people, of course, in addition to our plans and programs that we look forward to. So that is sort of where we are. And I anticipate that, we will, in the fullness of time, be able to make that case to the people of Nevis.
I mean, and I totally understand, of course, you're the incumbent and you would have done what you felt was best for the nation moving forward, and so you'd be able to run on that record. You mentioned earlier as well the fact that when it comes to criticism, some may say, especially your constituents, would say, hey, we may feel, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, we may feel you focus so much on the whole that sometimes we want you to look back here in a particular constituency. Of course, you have responsibility as the premier of the entire island, and of course, you, up until recently, were a member of cabinet as well. Do you believe that there is a possibility that doing those two full-time jobs may have stretched you a bit thin? Of course, we know you're a man with broad shoulders and could handle whatever. But do you believe it may have stretched you a bit thin, performing both roles simultaneously?
I don't think so. In all honesty, I think that what I need is, and the comment that I made about going and sitting on people's steps and their living rooms and having a chat with them, it's sort of that personal touch. I think that really comes down to time management and the willingness to make that a part of your daily engagement in the community. And so I don't think it has anything to do with having the jobs or doing the jobs. I think it has to do with making that commitment or renewing that commitment to ensure that we spend more time in the communities. Somebody reminded me recently that they did not elect a premier, they elected a representative. And I thought that was a very interesting reminder that all of us should remember, that we should not become so consumed with the work and doing the work that we forget how it is we got to where we are, and how it is we get to where we are is clearly about the people. So, some of us have the view, well, I build a nice road, I put in a nice house in development and people benefit from that and therefore that's enough. Our people are saying to me, no, I also want you, once you've put me in the house and I'm enjoying my home, come and sit and talk to me and my family as well and find out how we're doing. Yeah, find out how my daughter is doing at university. I want to be able to have that type of conversation with you. So that is certainly something I think that all of us need to do more of.
Okay, definitely.
Well, so for the results from the election just gone, we see that NRP seems to have bolstered a good enough, not winning voter. Sorry, the word slips me. But
the proper fight.
Yeah, they put up a pretty good fight, considering that you claim that they were not as, prepared or as much of a threat to you in the elections. Going into the local elections, is this still your thought process? Do you see that they may have more of a fan base that you thought? What are your thoughts on how they did and how you will do in the upcoming elections, whether it be next month or next year?
Can I start by saying I really love your blue nail polish? I think that's a really nice touch, for this interview. I won't make any comment on the red lipstick, but the blue nail polish I really like. The question, Jade, is a good question. I think that, however, what is happening in Nevis is that the NRP has been so consistent in losing elections that they now take great pride in saying I didn't lose too badly. And that is really the irony. It's like, somebody who's so accustomed to that type of behavior that they say, well, it wasn't as bad this time. The truth is that when you look inside the numbers, the election wasn't close. It wasn't even, it was a runaway. I won my seat by 411 votes. In a situation where there was clearly a shift away from the parties that formed Team Unity. PAM, as you would have said earlier, would have lost tremendous ground. PLP basically collapsed. And so the CCM, as a part of that, went out and said to the people of Nevis, give us the opportunity. And the people of Nevis responded positively. I won by 411 votes. I think my colleague in Gingerland, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, he too won in a landslide, I think perhaps by 400 or so. And Alexis Jeffers won by 59 votes. But let us remember that Alexis Jeffers is running in a seat, number 11, which was always an NRP seat. For 3 decades, that seat was held by the NRP. We won it for the very first time in history in June of 2020. And so to come back a year and a half, 2 years later, basically, and to win it again, to hold on to it, I think is very, very telling that the NRP, which threw everything they had, the kitchen sink and all, at us, that they have yet again been rejected by the people. And then, Jade, if we were to move now to the local election context, and we look inside the numbers, because remember, federally, we combine St. John's and St. Paul's, and we combine St. Thomas's and St. James. Locally, we separate those. So that is how 5 collapses to 3 and then expands out to 5 locally. In my seat, number 9, it is St. John's and St. Paul's. On the St. John's side, I won by 297. So it means if that were in a local election, that would have been safely in the CCM column. In the St. Paul's side, we won by 114. Therefore means, again, if that were a local election, safely in CCM column. In Gingerland, St. George, we won that comfortably, 400, that again, safely in the CCM column. St. James, we won by 189, again, safely in the CCM column. The only seat that we would have lost would have been St. Thomas's, which is the only seat we currently do not have. So if this were a local election, there would really have been no change whatsoever. We still would have been 4-1. In the context of this. So I hear the celebration from the NRP. I understand that we all need something to celebrate. I reminded at our victory rally that when I was a little boy, I used to go to a school called Chapel School. And I was very, very inept at anything to do with athletics. And my very first race in kindergarten, I remember running really fast. We were on a grass track at a place called Swamp. And I fell. And I wish I could tell you and your audience that I was in front when I fell, but I was already last when I fell. So I was in last place, I fell. And so I remember my mom of blessed memory saying to me, get up, get up, get up, come on, finish the race. And I finished the race dead last. And then she told me, you did really well. And I knew she was lying to me, but it is what people say, they want to console you. So she said, you did really well, don't worry yourself. And I think that's what the NRP is doing now. Somebody's patting them on the head and saying, not to worry, you did really well. But at the end of the day, it's still 3-0 and Nevis is still blue.
All right. I like your story at the end.
It's a true story.
Well, so do not currently you don't have a clear date for the upcoming election?
You can't lay it out. Maybe you could give us the exclusive.
I mean, we like those things here.
No, I don't have a clear date yet, but I think that we can expect an election in Nevis fairly soon.
Well, one thing that we've noticed is that it seems that it's always okay. Well, when Nevis does something, or when Nevis collects money, or when Nevis gains whatever, it's Nevis. But when St. Kitts does it, it has to be St. Kitts and Nevis. Is there a situation where we can say that sometime in the future it will be a situation where maybe funds are shared with Nevis, maybe from taxes or whatever other form of revenue earnings, we can clearly say that, okay, well, St. Kitts will get some fair share of that?
Well, we remember this debate about fair share really had to do not with revenue generally, because there's nobody in Nevis who's saying that, listen, if you go down to the coffee shop now and you pay VAT, that Nevis should get some of that. We're not interested in that. We're not interested in what money is generated in St. Kitts by Park Hyatt and by Marriott. We have zero interest in that, because we are saying whatever little money is generated by Four Seasons and Montpelier, we keep that. You keep whatever is generated at Park Hyatt and all of that. The one issue, and this is what I think we ought not to confuse, is the citizenship by investment money. And that's not money that's earned by St. Kitts. That's money that's earned by the Federation. That is national revenue that comes in from the negotiation of a national asset, which is our passport. And so I liken it to you and Azem owning something together, right? And deciding, let us use an example. Let's say you own a cow and you decide that you own it together, you bought it together, it belongs to both of you, but one of you goes out every morning and milks that cow and sells the milk. And then the money comes in and you says, well, no, I'm not going to share this money with you. And so that is really the issue that has arisen. So I want you to be very clear that we're not in Nevis talking anything about St. Kitts and its tax money. You know, whatever is raised at customs and all of that over there, we say more power to you. We're talking about this stream of income that has come from a particular non-tax source, which is the citizenship by investment. And we have said that the numbers are appalling, because the numbers suggest, and these are only what we were able to find, that in about a 12-year period, running from about 2008, that stream of income was about 5.3 billion EC dollars, from which Nevis got 400 million. So by any stretch of the imagination, 7% of that money flowing to Nevis, 93% of it flowing to St. Kitts, there's no justification for that. And it is not money that's earned in St. Kitts, because if there's a citizenship application that's processed from Four Seasons Resort, for example, processed from a development in Nevis, processed by a client in Nevis who comes to a lawyer in Nevis, it still all goes to St. Kitts, because St. Kitts is the repository, if you will. That is the headquarters. That is where this program is run from. But it would be a mistake to say that it is St. Kitts earning this money. Move that office to Charlestown, it would equally be a mistake to say that it is Nevis that is earning this money. The money is being earned, it's national revenue coming from the negotiation of our passport. And we have said that the people of Nevis are equal citizens in this country. Why, for example, should the people of St. Kitts have their fuel surcharge subsidized through CBI money, and those in Nevis have to pay their full fuel surcharge? Those are some of the questions that I think come down to a question of fairness. And that is why we need a government in Church Street that doesn't see St. Kitts or Nevis, but sees St. Kitts and Nevis a single country. The other issues about, for example, does St. Kitts deserve its own island government as Nevis does? Those are issues of constitutional reform. And certainly issues that are worthy to look at, in my view. Nearly 40 years after we've had this constitution, not a comma in it has ever been changed. So there is time, I think, to look at that afresh and to see whether or not we should have some constitutional reform to address some of those other issues. But I want just to be very clear that this is nothing about St. Kitts revenue, because CBI is not St. Kitts revenue. CBI is national revenue.
So what about the Charlestown Accord? we see that you guys were trying to use that to lay some ground rules for the team unity government, which is no longer here. Do you have any plans to speak to the Honorable Prime Minister about cementing some of those things that were outlined in that accord?
I absolutely do. A matter of fact, in my first letter to him, I have already laid out this whole issue of fair share, which was one of the building blocks of the Charleston Accord. But going beyond the Charleston Accord, it really is one of the building blocks for a future relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, I go back to the fuel surcharge, Jade. You currently live on St. Kitts and you're not paying a fuel surcharge. If you decide tomorrow, as a citizen of this country, you know what, let me move over to Nevis. I found a job over there or whatever. I got married and I'm going to go live in Nevis. You suddenly, by taking that 40-minute trip on the ferry or a 5-minute trip on the water taxi and relocating, you start to pay a fuel surcharge. At what point did you become less of a citizen because you decided to move to Nevis? And I think that many of us don't grapple with the reality of that. The reality of some of our people feeling left out of what is happening in our country. We go along and we say, oh, there's St. Kitts and Nevis people making noise. But it's not that. It's saying give us equal access and equal opportunity and allow our best minds to have the chance, allow all of our people to put our shoulders to the wheel of national development. We are so small as it is, the smallest country in the Caribbean, the smallest in the region. Can we afford to lock out 1/3 of our people from national development? I think the answer to that is no. I reflect all the time that it was only when I became foreign minister in 2015 that we started to have divisions playing roles as ambassadors in our diplomatic service. In 2015, our country had already been independent since 1989. So reflect that for almost 3 decades, we had not had a single person from Nevis in that role. Question is why? And when we raise these things, people say, oh, you're making noise about you're creating division. No, it is pointing out some very obvious things that the people of Nevis continue to say, we need equity. That is all we've asked for. And if we can achieve that, and if Dr. Drew can make a genuine effort to achieve that, I think he'll be the best prime minister we've ever had.
Totally understand.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mark, for joining us. The time is now 9 o'clock, so we have to wrap up this great conversation. But I'm sure you'll be back with us because you love us here at ILNT. So thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing whatever happens in the local election, whenever that may be. I'm sure you will be back, and we will also have Dr. Janice Hodge to speak to us. Would you be open to having a conversation while she's on as well, so both of you will be on at the same time?
I'm always open to having a conversation with Dr. Hodge, is somebody I know well. I don't think that she's the right person for Nevis, but certainly that's a conversation that we can have, and certainly the people have already sent a message. So I am not so sure that Dr. Hodge is even going to be the leader of the NRP going into the next election. So we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you. You do have a great day. I'm sure you have a busy day ahead.
Man, it's Friday, man. Let me know what you're saying.
He still has work.
Remember, him going to end up on somebody's step this afternoon. Yeah?
That is true. That is true.
and a living room or two. So that's right.
Exactly. Well, Premier,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good, and thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you. And you're right, I'm a great fan. So I'm thankful that I get a chance to hang out with real celebrities. And so, I look forward to being back at some point and to engaging with you again. Thank you.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Cheers.
All right, guys.